Hey guys, we're live here with Dennis Ford from New World Order Truth Radio. Thanks for coming on the show, Dennis.
Hey, Dennis.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you guys were picking up on that, but I had a little bit of scratchiness going on, but I can hear you now. But yeah, man, if anything, I just want to thank you guys, especially Don, for reaching out to me and having me, give me the opportunity to come on to actually talk about Chicago, because for me, it's something that I'm just a white guy. I don't live in Chicago, but I think there's a bloodbath going on in Chicago that nobody is discussing, much like Fukushima and other things. But Chicago is, it's important to me. I can't really tell people why. I just feel like there's just so much death and destruction going on, and I can't understand why with the strict gun control in Chicago. So maybe you guys can explain it to me, because I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, well, obviously, gun control works great, doesn't it?
Well, it seems like the gun laws don't exactly keep people safe from getting shot.
No, they don't.
No.
I don't know, man.
That's interesting, too, because I was looking at, I have many stats from the last 2 or 3 years on Chicago. I recommend, I don't like plugging other people's websites on shows, but there's a website called Hey Jackass, and just type that in, and it'll take you to this site, and it has all the stats from Chicago right now from 2016, but you can go back and check out the other years, 2014 and 2015. But I wanted to point this out. From 2014 to 2015, there was a 21% increase in murders and shootings in Chicago. And the way this year is shaping up, it's just getting worse. It's going to vastly superior, it's going to pass that 21% this year, in my view. Yeah. And just to give you a little hint, in September already this month, 27 people have been shot and killed. 136 have been shot and wounded. So just think about that, 136 people already.
That's insane.
Total shot is 163, and there's been 30 homicides. So there's been 3 homicides that have been stabbings or something else. But the bulk of that, 27 people have been shot already in the month of September. And last month wasn't pretty, and the month, it just keeps getting worse.
Right.
Every month.
So
I just want to point this out, too, real quick. When I was talking to Don before the show, if you look at just the stats and how they're going, there's something going on in Chicago. And what is actually going on is that these are young African-American males. They're not all African-American males, but these are the younger, maybe not in their 20s yet, but moving that way. And what they're doing is they're joining gangs. And as you know, gangs work like the more dirt you do, the higher you go. So these kids are trying to prove themselves, and they're just killing people. And that's pretty much what's going on. There's drugs and money involved. So it's just bad news all the way around. And like I said earlier, where are these guns coming from?
Right.
If you can't get a gun in Chicago.
I mean,
so
I'd hate to say it, but I mean, we got
vans and alleys.
The Fast and the Furious comes to mind. I mean, obviously
somewhere they got to be coming from somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's not the only.
My main point is that somebody created a market to be able to get these people the guns. If you want a gun, they can get it for you in Chicago.
Yeah, no doubt.
Along with a lot of other things.
Yeah.
But
so, I mean, you got Soros.
The stats on this site, or if anybody is just researching Chicago or going through it, it's very sad. It's very tragic. And again, I think a lot of people don't want to talk about it or don't want to have anything to do with it because, again, these are young black males, mostly gang members killing each other. So people are like, who cares? But they forget these are still people. Well, these are still human beings.
You made a really good point talking about, how most of the motive behind this is people trying to prove themselves and trying to move up the ranks in these gang structures.
Exactly.
If you think about an area where this has been going on for decades,
yep.
This is essentially
it's
what
nothing
we've
new.
created is, a breeding ground for the most hardened gang members that America can produce. You know what I mean? If it's left unchecked as it has been, I mean, they're not even reporting on it, let alone trying to enforce the laws anymore.
That's another thing I wanted to get to as well, is when it comes to the media. Don did a video to promote the shows this week, and it's kind of cool that he threw this up in there. He was saying, why are they avoiding this and not covering on it? There's a big reason for that, because they don't want people to realize that they messed up really bad. Like, whatever their policies are, their laws,
that's true,
completely, failed. Big time. Yeah. Well, so they don't want to report on it because they know people will call them out on it. Yeah, so that's what I think.
No doubt.
And it has to do with them being young African American males
and if you want to go a little more deeper, a little more sinister, I mean, maybe they're the ones benefiting off the arms sales as well, the ones setting up the laws.
Oh, no
Yeah,
doubt.
that's a good
Because you got
That's a good point,
Soros,
too.
you got Soros running deep in Chicago, so that whole network.
But like I said, it's just
we know how he is.
it's just something that I remember a few years ago. This was like 2012, 2013. I came across an article that was talking about some kids that got murdered in Chicago. Like they had stray bullets or something that killed these kids, or a young girl or whatever it was. And it's hard to remember right now. But anyways, I went to that, and then I was going through it, and it was giving me stats on yearly murders. And then it led me to another couple sites and everything. And ever since then, I've just been kind of been fascinated with it because I don't understand what's going on. And that's what I said when I got on here is somebody has to explain it to me because this is absurd. I mean, it's a bloodbath. It's basically, you know, five people on a weekend getting murdered is always bad. But for me, I'm kind of looking for that because I'm used to seeing 9, 10, 11, 12, you know, people getting murdered. So, like I said, it's just something I've been interested in. I've been collecting data on it for years. I don't really get an opportunity to talk about it. So again, thanks for having me on to address this issue because I try to cover it on my own shows, you know, over at the network, and
it's good to
people have their
get it
views,
out.
I guess.
It's good to get it out as much as you can, man. Like anything, I'm all about just anything. Even
have things gotten
even if
better
it's
or worse since Rahm Emanuel was elected mayor?
Oh, jeez.
It seems like whenever he was put in office, I'm not sure if that was last year or the year before, somewhere in there.
Maybe.
I mean, yeah, I don't know about out there, but out here in Virginia, he's got a, you know, at least I guess in, you know, the circles we run in, he's kind of got a reputation due to his connections with the Bush and Clinton administrations, his role in the whole neocon mafia, kind of widely regarded as, you know, one of the bigger criminals and that's been involved in federal or state government.
Well, again, I hate to go on this route, but everything you guys were talking about the first hour and when I've caught your shows in the past, these people kind of want the chaos. They don't want to fix things. Exactly. They want the chaos, and that's how they, you know, they get more order, if you will.
Yeah, it's classic Hegelian dialectic.
Right.
You create a problem, you solve it, and then you reap the benefits.
Hey, let me get your take
and
on
these are evil people. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
not everybody that's in branches of government is corrupt, but the majority of them are. That's a fact.
Well, if there were as many actual bad apples as there are bad apple cops, there'd be a federal investigation into what's wrong with the apple industry.
Exactly. See, that's a valid point.
I think
and like I said, when it comes to Chicago, it seems like this is being orchestrated for some reason. I don't, you know, again, I know why the media is not covering it, but I think, you know, they want more chaos. They, you know, and don't get me wrong, Chicago is just one city in this country. A lot of cities in this country are in bad shape.
Even in Virginia, we've got a problem with the prison industrial complex that's popping up.
I'm in Virginia, my brother.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Let me get your take on this,
I know what you're talking about. Virginia is horrible when it comes to that.
Yeah, you know the prison industrial complex. It's privatized slavery, 21st century slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let me get your take on this real quick.
Yeah,
man.
good on Virginia.
This,
you know?
this was on CBS.
So, I mean, like I said, it's just one of those things that is news, but, you know, it's bad news, so people don't want to really hear it. And I understand that. But, again, you have to have some kind of level of understanding or maybe even compassion for these people. Maybe they don't have any other route to go, and that's another thing that I want to look into is
it's a lack of economic advancement.
Yeah, I'm just saying possibly getting out to Chicago and talking to these kids because where are all these big-name African-American activists, you know, I'm not going to mention any names, or Black Lives Matter. Where are these groups when it comes to Chicago? Right. So somebody else has got to do it. So that's where I'm heading with it. Maybe getting on the ground and talking to these kids. Again, I might not make it out alive out of the city.
There's a series on Reason.com that I've seen called Anarchy in Detroit where they talk about how people have, you know, Detroit doesn't have a functioning government, and I don't know if it's better or worse than Chicago's, but it's right there with it. There's stuff that the police don't even have the budget to respond to. So this whole series is about what happens, what people do in the absence of a functioning government, and I think that's what, you know, I want to see more out of people is communities coming together, solving their own problems without the state. Yeah, absolutely. You know, the whole anarchy thing is one thing, but you know, we kind of all know right from wrong, and me personally, I don't think that. Yeah, I think. I don't think we should have rulers or government. I don't agree with that. I think, you know, when you look at it, like I said, these are the most corrupt people on the planet. So who are they to tell us that anything is good or bad for us? They can't even govern themselves. Exactly.
Check this out.
You know,
man.
so that's a whole other show in itself. And I think, you know, I appreciate people getting on the radio and using their voices and actually communicating with people and trying to find some kind of common ground, because we could all just, be fighting or anything else.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
sure.
It's just good that we have
communication. That's the key.
Yeah,
man.
radio community where we can kind of link up and meet other people.
Yeah.
I just ran into Don, and I haven't known Don that long. I mean, it's probably been, I don't know, he posted in a group or something, and then I guess he would see in my news feed and just asked me to come on and talk about Chicago. For me, that's huge because, again, I don't really get guest spots to talk about Chicago. Usually it's talking about politics, the same old.
Mm-hmm.
But this kind of ties into politics. This kind of goes hand in hand with it.
Oh, absolutely.
Because obviously they don't know what they're doing, is my point.
check this out, man. A Chicago man, fed up, frustrated with this is from CBS. Fed up and frustrated with what he says is the rising crime in his neighborhood, takes matters into his own pocketbook, shelling out thousands to pay for private security.
That's how it's done.
So no, that ain't how it's done, man. So you want to corporatize the police force now?
He's already paying for security.
Well, no,
I know this is ridiculous. Why should somebody even have to do that?
Well, actually, yeah, I do want to see
what
policing
are they paying
privatized.
the cops for?
I want to see municipal policing abolished.
No, please,
No,
no. I don't want police forces fighting each other.
No,
that's
man.
where that leads.
That shit is not going to be good, man.
Well, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah,
They're not. They're not mercenaries.
Oh yeah, because corporations don't fight each other all the time.
That makes them
Hang on.
mercenaries.
So if
That is
Brinks
the
and Top Guard,
definition of a
if Brinks and
mercenary.
Top Guard can escort your van, they can't guard your apartment
They can't
complex.
fucking shoot people and say, "Well, that's that."
They can shoot you if you rob a bank. Why can't they shoot you if you're breaking
But
into
then,
somebody's
then
apartment
they're
complex?
indicted and they go through the judicial process. Police are essentially exempt from that entire thing, and that's to me that's what Black Lives Matter is about.
Well, yeah,
I
one
know
system
we're
for the-
talking about Black lives here, but come on.
One
Police
system for them, another for
power
us.
abuse is
Well,
what
let me
the
ask
fucking
you-
core of that whole thing is about, and that's the core of what everyone can agree on. So it's weird whenever that fucking whole movement gets turned into a racial thing because the argument is against police abuse of force, right?
We'll quit giving them the authority to abuse.
I mean, make it about that. And
So give it
everyone's
to
like,
a
well,
private
yeah, shit.
corporation that can't even be held accountable.
Right.
But you know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
it's ridiculous, dude. It should be a state function, man.
But the state's not going to solve this problem. You can't
It's not
solve the ills of government with more government.
it's not
Right.
more government. It's the same amount of government.
Yeah,
You just
Yeah,
need
just
to
to give you
clean
guys some more stats. Again, like I said, you can check out this site later on.
yeah, what was the URL on that?
It is heyjackass.com. Just, one word.
That's not a joke, is it?
No, I guess it's intended to be because when they report on something, they run up a stat on like a weekly update, and when they tally it, they say this week's stupidity because that's essentially what it is. Just
That's
people
good. Yeah.
being stupid, but at the same time, maybe these kids or the younger youth in Chicago really don't see any other way out, and I understand that. I'm not from the best neighborhood either, but there is always a choice. We all kind of have that ability to know. We can go this road or we can go that road. And I think these kids are choosing this road because it's fast money, women, cars,
It's what they're
drugs.
exposed to, I mean, it's what they have access to. It's right there. It's more prominent than the other route. I mean, people will take the easiest path, always.
I mean, if you work your whole week at a 40-hour week job, I don't even know what the job situation is in Chicago for the inner cities, but, if you work, you make $400, $500 a week maybe, and you put that up against making $2,000 a day, what would of course they're going to choose that. That's easy for them.
Right.
And
Not to mention the chunkier paycheck that honest work, if you turn to the black market, you get all your money.
yeah, no taxes.
Exactly. If you work like a stiff, then they take 40% of what you make.
Right, which is wrong in itself, but
Well, that
that's
goes
what we got.
towards
I wanted to point out one more thing too, because I do listen to underground hip hop music and other artists, indie artists, and all that. But one of the major problems with the culture in Chicago is got to be the music, because when I listen to some of the underground music and some of the artists that even come out of Chicago, it's just, you can't listen to that music over and over again. I mean, gangster hip hop and rap is one thing, but this is just like murder music. This is just like replaying over and over again. So it is a level of programming as well. I don't think it has to be hard to break. It has to be. So that's where the compassion comes from.
We talk about the media industrial complex on this show, and we will a lot in the future. And I think that's one of the things is, you send people out to do that to the culture. You destroy people through their culture. Use it against them.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. When it comes, Black Lives Matters is one thing, but again, I just get frustrated when they only focus on one thing when there's major issues going out there. Again, the people in the ghettos or the communities, they're proud of their Jay-Z's, or they're proud of these big name rappers that just sell them death all day. You know, they gladly give them money to sell them basically genocide rap. You know, just keep listening to this over again. You know,
well,
whatever.
You look at anywhere that humans are lacking opportunities, where they're maybe even oppressed, anywhere in the world where humans are under those conditions, and they lash out in that type of way. I mean, it's not even lashing out; it's a natural reaction in a way to become violent against, you know, forces that you otherwise can't fight. You know, I mean, that's a human reaction. So, you know, just like you're saying, I mean, we definitely can't, you know, place blame on anyone that's caught up in that system. I mean, really, it's you know, you look at any part of the world, even throughout history or today or whatever, and you know, you see it recurring. I mean, that's what breeds desperation.
Right, and you know, when it comes to Chicago, it's actually a vicious circle for these young kids because, like I said, they only got two or three options really, and if they take the gang route and they go that route, you know, if you make it out alive or you don't go to prison, you know, you ever see these old gang members on TV and they go after, you know, when they're 30 or 40 and they get out the gang and they go tell the kids in the community, hey, don't join the gang, little kid, you know?
Yeah.
Don't do that in the first place. Then you won't have to go back and tell people that you messed up. But, you know, I can't live people's lives for them. Of course they're going to make decisions. But
at least they're trying to make right now, right?
I just don't.
At least they didn't run for office.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I just don't really get the whole concept of what's going on in this city. And like I said, it's not just this city; it's throughout this country.
Right.
Which is really a problem.
We talked in the first hour about this fascist ideology that's invaded the U.S. government. And I think that you're seeing the effects of it right now on the streets of Chicago.
Because what they believe is with the Blavatsky stuff.
Well, I'm sure you guys are familiar with. You know, the Nazis coming over here after the war.
Yeah, Project Paperclip.
We talked about that.
Exactly. You know, I'm probably a good percentage of German, so I think even my family might have been tied up in that. I don't know. I have to look I have to look into that. But that was very interesting that they brought them over here, and then we've seen, you know, things over the years progress, and you know, instead of doing away with these individuals, they were probably sick individuals. They just, hey, come work for us.
Right.
And who knows, you know? Like, we don't know.
Yeah, there were a lot
of
of good souls, you know, over there caught up in that system too. I mean, you got to give people the benefit of the doubt. You can't assume that anyone that came from Nazi era Germany was,
unless you know something about their direct involvement, which is why I single out guys like Rahm Emanuel, because you can trace Rahm Emanuel. His dealings with guys like Richard Pearl, Paul Wolfowitz, you can trace that back.
Sure, but I'm talking about like even general, you know, citizens as the war was going on, largely were unaware of what the true, you know,
like we talked about earlier, it's compartmentalization. The powers at the top keep people, you know, the right hand doesn't know what the left is doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So you know.
So you're familiar with the secret societies and stuff, right?
Like I was saying earlier, this is you know, it's topics that you could cover a whole show on. You could do 2 hours on just these topics, but it is important because the majority of people in society are so wrapped up in their 9-to-5 or their kids or whatever they're doing that this, you know, if they turn into this show, they'd be like, what the hell are they even talking about?
Right. And
like,
even if they are tuned into the news, they're just looking at surface politics.
Exactly. You know, or, you know, this whole thing with Hillary, people were like, oh, what's going on? But if this maps out the way I'm thinking it, this could postpone the election, you know, or something like that. We could be moving towards that.
I don't see that. They would have a hard time pulling that shit
I kind of feel bad for her. You know,
I do too. I'm kind of starting to feel bad for her, and I never thought I would say that.
Well, no, I mean, Earth is easily 30 degrees colder than her home planet, so it takes a lot of energy to
think about this. You know, you could feel bad for someone undergoing some kind of health dilemma, something like that. But you have to consider that she has concealed, to her own benefit, her health problems. She has deceived people.
Yeah, that is true.
FDR would not stand for this.
Yeah, I don't even compare her to FDR. I mean, not that FDR was some fucking saint, but Jesus Christ.
would not stand for this.
Yeah. I'm sick of that comparison, man. Shit. I was happy to see Hillary Clinton's campaign.
He sent people
collapse,
to internment camps before it was cool.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of internment camps, we've been talking about Chicago, and there's this story that surfaced last year about Homan Square.
Yep.
It's a black prison site that, you know, an off-the-books prison site where people in Chicago were getting disappeared to. People would disappear for weeks at a time, and nobody would know where they were. Their lawyers would go to find them. They weren't being held at the normal jail or a normal municipal police department. and they were, out of sight until their trial came up. And even then, they would have people being tried in secret by secret tribunals.
Yeah, and that was released. That was public knowledge, and it's just, it's under the, nobody remembers.
Yeah, no one got fired for that, I'm sure.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, like we talked about earlier, I worked for a small newspaper out here in Virginia, and I tried to run stories about it, and they didn't even want to touch it. And it's, if people really knew what was going on, it'd be time for Bastille Day too.
Mm-hmm. I think so too.
I'd love to see that, but that's another thing I can't see happening.
As long as people got their football games and their scratch tickets and
distracted and their goddamn Pokemon Go
six packs
of
Mickeys, they don't give a shit.
Walking blindly through intersections trying to catch a fucking Pokemon. People are not interested, man. People are not interested.
They're not, and that's part of the problem is like when people communicate, or radio show is one thing, but when you have a conversation with somebody, mostly now it's going to be NFL. Probably you're going to be talking about some football or something that, for me personally, I really don't. I moved. I got out of that once I started realizing what was going on, and that eventually what happened to a lot of
brother. Bread and circuses.
It's games. It's literally games.
I'm just saying it gets to a point where a person is like, yeah, I know these things are going on, but I don't care. I made the other decision where I was like, I do care, because the future generations are going to look back at all three of us and anybody else, their parents, whatever, whatever, and they're going to say, why didn't you guys do something? Why did you hand this over to us? Because it's getting bad, man. It's going to get to a point where, who knows what's coming. And they're not going to be happy when they grow up, when they're, in their 20s or something. If we even make it that long, is my point.
Yeah, no doubt.
They're not going to be happy with you telling them that you just sat around and watched football and went to work. And
I caught a lot of Pokemon.
Yeah, I caught Pokemon. They're not going to, that's not the answer they want. And they shouldn't even have to ask you that. We should be, I wish we had the numbers, because if we had the numbers, we could see something like really drastic happen. And that's another question I wanted to ask you guys is, in your lifetime, do you think you'll ever see, not a revolution, but,
a renaissance? I hope for a
like
renaissance.
That.
I'd love to see a renaissance. Renaissances are so much cooler than revolutions, because if you have a revolution, you're not guaranteed an American revolution where you end up a little bit freer than you were. You could get a French or a Russian revolution, or you could have a Chinese revolution where 56 million people get murdered by their own government.
You know exactly what it would take? If the internet was shut down.
I'm with you.
People would get out in the streets and they'd start talking to each other, and that, just like what I was saying before, communication is the key, because if you're getting your facts and your messaging from the whatever sources are collaborating behind the scenes to fucking strategize that messaging, then you're not expressing true independent thought. You're not actually engaging in the world, right? So once we get on this level and it's actually individuals sharing these ideas, I mean, that's well,
you bring up a good point too with communication. Sometimes communication can be good or it can be bad, because again, these kids in Chicago, they're getting force-fed the same old tired story that has been played out over and over again, and people don't want to be original. Everybody wants to be like the person next to them. Usually when I'm going out in public, talking to people, it's just like the carbon copy. It just repeats itself. And it's hard to be original in modern day society. Trust me, it's very hard. And I'm not talking about getting piercings and tattoos and dyeing your hair.
Yeah, that's just.
I'm talking about just standing out.
Right. There's about 10 or 12 player models out there in circulation that I've seen.
Yeah,
that's the.
So you only get to choose from those, and if you don't choose one of those, then
this is staggering. Looking back at this Home and Square thing. The reports say that this is coming from The Guardian. They report that there were over 7,351 people. Speaking of Black Lives Matter, more than 6,000 of them black people who police documents show have been detained and interrogated at Home and Square without a public notice of their whereabouts or access to an attorney.
That's them trying out that revoke of Posse Comitatus. They probably had the military scoop them up.
This thing says none of the men identified in the newest documents had fled custody or were injured in the course of a lawful warrant. All were subject to force by Chicago police officers after they were already in custody at Home and Square. According to depositions with officers, more than 24 first-hand accounts handcuffing is standard. Police applied force to some arrestees sufficient to warrant hospitalization.
Well, here's a question for you.
Sure.
Do you think that Chicago is the only city with a facility like this?
Absolutely not. I can't confirm this, but anybody familiar with Hampton Roads geography, we have some major bridge tunnels around here. We have the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. We have the Monitor Merrimack. We have the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. The Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel is huge. It goes across the entire Chesapeake Bay.
Yep.
And I've heard rumors circulating, I can't substantiate them. If I could, I would blow the lid off of it right here on this radio show. But I've heard rumors that there are actually secret prisons or CIA detention facilities
under that restaurant. I knew it.
Yeah,
on the islands in the middle of these bridge tunnels, out in the middle of the ocean.
Well, think about this, right? Just follow me here for a second. When people were talking about the FEMA camps, right? Oh, they're building FEMA camps. There's FEMA camps that we're all going to end up going to. This might play into that. These secret facilities that we don't know about could be where people would go and disappear. Yeah. Right? Makes sense, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
man. The thing about them FEMA camps is
it may not be a camp that you're thinking with like barbed wire.
They could kick out a camp
it
in
might
like
just be a
5
beat up
minutes,
building
dude.
somewhere. And
they could really kick it out,
missing.
man. That field over there, what was it, Fort AP Hill? They could put a FEMA camp there in like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
They got these machines that feed out that barbed wire, and it's just tents, dude. That's it. There's your FEMA camp.
Yeah,
they don't need to have facilities. You know what I mean? They may have these special ones
barbed
for
wire
like
and trailers.
deep, like deep interrogations and stuff.
Well,
but
you
as far as like a
all the-
catastrophe happening or
After
a
Katrina,
terrorist
all
attack,
those trailers from Katrina that are still down there in Louisiana rotting. It's not.
Yep.
It's not their money. They don't give a shit.
No, they don't.
no, I mean
They don't care.
that's the thing, man. That shit could happen in an instant, man. Like, and they don't even need the facilities. They just put them up, man.
All right, so here's the hypothetical. What happens if you wake up tomorrow and there's no internet? And you're like, what the fuck? And you look out in the streets and the cops are fighting the army. What do you
Holy
do?
Fucking shit.
Because that just happened in Turkey about a month ago. You guys remember that
Yeah.
fucking crazy?
Yeah,
shit? So
yeah.
what do we do? What's your move?
Well,
Who do you
first
side
thing,
with? Do you
I
just-
gotta get informed about who
Yeah.
to fucking side with
Good
first.
luck.
Yeah.
Ask your neighbor, and he's gonna fucking ask his neighbor, and we're
Right.
playing a fucking game of telephone. That's the
Wow.
precarious situation that we're in. We're so dependent on our fucking information feed, like a lifeline, man. We are fucking so dependent on it that we wouldn't have a clue. We would have no
Yeah.
fucking idea.
Hey, there's a topic for a future show: how to survive
that's-
after the apocalypse.
Do you guys even own an actual FM radio you could like pop
do.
on with a
I do. I
battery in
definitely
it,
do,
you know?
yeah.
I mean, it's a
Well,
rare
that's the
thing
thing.
now, you know?
I have
That's the
access
thing.
to a CB radio.
They disabled FM
Or a ham.
reception in the
Yeah.
fucking smartphones.
Yeah, they could
It's
do-
for licensing reasons, sure, you know.
They
But,
could
hey,
jam
it's
your
handy,
signal
right?
anyway, man.
Well, that's the thing, right? When it comes to cell phones, it's amazing. It blows my mind that, you're basically walking around with a computer in your pocket and you still don't know shit about anything. That's mind-blowing. I can't even,
look,
not to be mean or anything.
No,
not
as
to,
it stands,
Man, I
it's
agree
an
with
amazing
that
thing. No,
so
look,
much.
it's an incredible thing that we do have these computers in our pocket that give us that ability to look up any fact, to have any piece of information that's available,
when you're-
or to communicate
When you're
across
carrying
the
the
world.
entire
like,
sum of human knowledge in your pocket on a 3x5 piece of plastic, then you don't
Right.
have to know anything.
it's a beautiful
It's all right
power that we have with that. But again, what are we doing with it? We're playing fucking games.
there. Yeah.
Well, it's a double-edged sword.
What is knowledge? What is praxeology? And these are things
It's
that
what
are
you
lost
do
on
with
people.
it.
They don't even
How
teach
about that?
civics anymore. They don't even teach basic civics.
No, they don't. And then, that's another thing with attacking the generations. I think what we're seeing in Chicago and in, just the youth in general, my generation, I was born in the 80s, so millennials or whatever.
Yeah, 81 here.
Yeah, 82 for me. So I just had a birthday on Monday, too. So
Hey, happy birthday.
yeah, happy birthday, man.
Thank you. And I think what you're seeing is they have to attack the younger generations, the kids that are coming up. They have to get on that because, like they always say, the kids are the future leaders, right? So they don't want critical, like Carlin would say, they don't want critical, rational thinkers.
Exactly.
They want people to just do the paperwork and do your job and go home. So that's kind of what's been going on.
People who are just smart enough to show up and run the machines, and
Exactly.
not smart enough to realize how bad things are.
Back to your tasks.
Right. So Carlin was right when it comes to that. But I'm just talking about the generation. I think they did it with my generation because when I was growing up in the 80s, we were at the birth of these video game technology in general. I mean, in the 90s, the computer was huge. It was massive.
Right, but putting
You
it
know,
in the
in the
living
late
room,
80s.
though, getting something in every home, that's a cultural thing for sure. There's a lot of benefits to it, but you're definitely
Well,
right.
they did the
There's
same thing with
not-
television. Television,
Right.
I don't know how long television's been around, but that's one of their,
50s.
they love that, man. They love television.
It's classic method of programming. I mean,
that's where
they call it programming for a reason, because you're being programmed.
Right.
Yeah, you're being programmed. I hate to tell people that, you know. But Eddie Griffin is another one. You get these comedians that get on stage and they're comedians, but they're telling you truth, and people laugh at it like it's funny. You know, it is funny.
I heard a hilarious joke, man. This new stand-up comedian, his name's Barack Obama. He said Hillary Clinton is fit to serve as president. I fucking knee slapper that.
Oh, that guy. That
guy. Speaking of Pokemon, what are
Yeah.
Hillary's favorite Pokemon?
Hey, listen up, guys.
Coughing and wheezing.
Listen up, guys. You want to get in on the conversation, you can give us a call here, 757-525-3276.
You know,
hey, Dennis, can you hear me, buddy?
Clone or who knows, man? Like, we don't even know if this is even her. She might have died 5 years ago.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
She just molded recently.
They've got probably.
There you go. I know she shedded her skin recently. That's probably what's wrong with her. She's just dehydrated, you know? So...
Yeah, if you guys want to jump in on the conversation
that's the world we
here.
live in. You know, that's out of all the people that live in this country, those are the best two people they can throw in front of us. Seriously. You know, that's a joke in itself.
So, yeah,
you know?
We got what's that number again, man?
Yeah, you guys want to call in and get on the conversation, it's 757-525-3276. That's 757-525-3276.
If you're listening, let's light these lines up.
Oh,
yeah, I was thinking maybe one or two people would call in tonight. But like I said, this is really... I haven't done a guest spot in a while, but, you know, when it comes to radio community, I kind of do one every once in a while. But this is, like I said, this was big for me because I feel like most of the time I'm the only one talking about Chicago. Like, if you got 2,000 friends in your feed and I'm in it, I'm going to be the one guy talking about Chicago. And not just Chicago, but Fukushima, a lot of things that people just don't want to talk about. They hope it goes away. But I don't agree with that. I think we need to talk about these issues. Otherwise, they're just going to get worse, right?
Yeah, and
correct me if I'm wrong.
And they're all interconnected. The prison-industrial complex, the military-industrial complex, the pharma-industrial complex, the secret societies, the general malfeasance, the debt, the soul-crushing piles of debt. You know, the baby boomers love to go on about, oh, you kids these days, you know, moving back in with your parents. Oh, yeah, well, thanks for unpegging the dollar from the value of gold, you jerk-holes.
Let's not even crack that.
No, that's a good point, though. That reminds me of the 60s, you know, when they had the whole hippie thing going on. That could have been something. And I was talking to my dad and my mom about that.
Should have voted for Goldwater.
Yeah, I was like, what happened with that? And they were like, oh, it just kind of phased out. And I was like, man, that could have been something, you know? Not the hippies.
It turned into some communes and stuff. And, I mean, you know, the thing about capitalism, I'm going to, you know, rant for just a second here.
By all means.
Capitalism has taken over as our economic system because it is effective and because it is cutthroat and because it's ruthless. And it's not necessarily to any individual's benefit or any, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say any individuals, any group of individuals' benefit. Certainly, you know, individuals can take advantage of capitalism and whatnot. It's essentially a fucking lottery.
What we have isn't capitalism, though. It's state corporatism.
It's not true capitalism anymore.
No, it's not a free market. It's never been a free market. Not since Washington betrayed the Whiskey Rebellion.
I'm saying, though, in competition with not just ideology like a, you know, hippie, new world, whatever, new age, whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Not just in competition with that, but in competition with all other economic systems across the world. It fucking won, you know? It's like,
oh, yeah.
You got to give it to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Right. There's not too many things in our world that really go by the definition of what you would get on Wikipedia or something, or whatever, you know? Right. Not too many things run on the exact words of their definition, and that's one of them. Also, when you look at just how things are set up, it's a lot of things are like traps when you really break it down. It's like just getting involved with things. It's just motivated to set you up to be not necessarily in debt, but just so you're easily controllable.
Definitely. Right. You control people through debt. Hey, speaking of traps, have you seen any use of, or have there been any reports of use by drones by Chicago police?
I haven't heard anything.
Is that a thing yet?
That's something they should look into, though. To be honest with you.
Well, North Dakota recently has a bill moving through to authorize the use of weaponized drones. There was a thing that came out recently.
Where's RoboCop when you need him, you know?
Seriously.
Like, what's going on?
Come
on, man.
This whole thing is really something I've been keeping an eye on for a year or two now. I'm really surprised we haven't seen anyone take advantage of this ongoing obvious vulnerability in all security. I mean, okay, let me give you a hypothetical, right? For about $500-600, you could make an armed remote control drone that could go and shoot a political candidate, say, at a speech, right? Fly right the fuck over the Secret Service, running after it, whatever the fuck. They can't stop it. You know what I'm saying? You can put a camera on this thing. Within 20 seconds, you can fly the thing from a mile away and fucking shoot, have a pistol fucking right in someone's face. Whoever's face. Just hypothetical for you, okay? Now, they
Well, just
the
recently
FAA
we saw
has
the first...
has started cracking down in this summer. They actually required these devices that are over 250 grams, which is, you know, cell phone size. Like
register your
you
drone.
have to register, right? But that's the thing. There's no way for them to really enforce it unless they do some blanket blackout.
Well, and of course the rules won't apply to
them.
them. You just saw the first killing of an American citizen by a remotely operated robot not too long ago in Connecticut.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
So we've crossed the line. We've stepped into the abyss. We've been in free fall for quite some time now.
Yeah, we're kind of going down that road anyway, so that's not really far-fetched at this point. But, you know, if these cops don't want to put their lives on the line and they don't want to go into, you know, the war zone, that could be a possibility. That may be something. Maybe they're already looking at that or working on something like that. Not that I agree with it.
I've seen some.
If they could fit a drone with a bomb, they could fit it with a non-lethal weapon. And, you know, I would advise anybody that's, you know, thinking about going into law enforcement, don't. Get a job in the private sector. You'll live a lot longer.
Yeah, I read this story, too. Chicago, the police department in Chicago is starting this program. They've already been running it, but it's a program they're kind of amping up. But basically what it does is it listens for gunshots.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Sound great?
We're getting those on our streetlights around here. Newport News has been installing them.
Yeah, that's been around for a while.
What good does that do, though? You're basically it's not their job, but you might want to get there before the gun goes off. Is all I'm saying.
They can use that. I mean, we live in an age of data. The more data you have, if you have a timestamp on a gunshot, that's really useful data. You know?
Yeah, I understand that, but I just, you know, what that brings me back to what I was saying earlier. Maybe this is, you know, controlled chaos.
Well,
you know,
exactly.
they want to.
That's why I'm so skeptical of putting, you know, the police power exclusively in the hands of government, because if you shift the burden from punishing crimes after they've already been committed to preventing them from happening in the first place, I think you'll see a
future
much,
crime.
Yeah, you'll see a much safer, saner society. Like, okay, I you know, to use this as an example, there's a privatized community in Williamsburg called Kingsmill, and it has a privatized security force. Their job is the security force's job is to protect your property, to protect people from breaking into your shit, stop, diffuse domestic violence, that sort of thing. It's not their job to kick in your door for smoking a joint. It's not their job to, you know, kick in your door or, you know, write you tickets for your lawn not being cut.
How many rapes have they had on Kingsmill grounds?
Not too many.
Right.
So, you know, there is incentives, and I would encourage anybody listening, go to FEE.org. It's the Foundation for Economic Education, and look up how policing works in a privatized city.
Right.
And there's there are better options than municipal policing, because for one thing, you breed that thin blue line gang mentality that the police have. They don't view themselves as public servants. They view themselves as harbingers of this, you know, their own force.
That protect and serve stuff, they don't do that no more.
Yeah, they protect and serve each other.
Yeah, exactly. And then again, you got Masons, and same thing with the military. You get Freemasons, infiltrating, or secret, you know, hierarchy. All those things go on. You know, it's a ranking system too. This is how they get awarded. Same thing with the gangs. You know, the more shit you do, or shoot take, or whatever they do, the further you go.
Right. We heard all these stories of the CIA importing cocaine back in the 80s. You know, you hear about a CIA plane carrying 4 tons of blow landing in crashing in the Everglades. So who's to say that, you know, the people at the top of these gangs aren't actually law enforcement?
Right. That's a valid point. And if you think about it, again, we don't really know, you know, when it comes to cops, you know, it's hard to bring up that conversation with somebody. Radio shows and this community would be different, but just the everyday person on the street, their idea of what a cop is and what they represent is so far-fetched from what really happens. And they are a gang. To be honest with you, they are.
Well, it's a double-edged sword. It really is, because
there was a report that came out that said that the cops, I guess it was last year, they had confiscated more material things and money from people than the robbers I think in the whole entire country. I'm not sure.
Civil asset forfeiture is out of control.
Yeah.
Right.
Out of control.
Well,
they're seizing more stuff than even robbers and people.
That's a whole show in and of itself.
Yeah, they had those things they could scan your bank card, the chip on them from a distance, and if they thought you had suspicious money, they would transfer it out.
You got to join your car. We're going to take your car. That's robbery. And then you kidnap me and take me to jail.
You had 2 joints. You're a dealer, buddy. We're taking your house too.
Yeah.
Right. And that reminds me of something else. The whole marijuana thing that's going on in this country is way overdue. It's we should have had legal weed a long time ago, and maybe even some other drugs too. But I'm not going to go into that whole topic. But I think as far as when it comes to marijuana or cannabis or whatever you want to call it, I think we're kind of we're missing. We're not where we're supposed to be, and it's because these assholes are telling us that it's a gateway drug, and they had a chance to take it to a Schedule 2.
Yeah, it's a gateway to the fridge.
Exactly. And they had a chance to schedule it.
Gateway to Chanelo's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I saw that they could have.
Yeah, they had a chance to change this and actually do some research, and the government was like, no.
Yeah.
Just like Pineapple Express, he's like, illegal.
Well, you know what?
And that's it.
Yeah, I'm surprised Black Lives Matter hasn't picked up on this.
That should be a key point.
One of the big reasons for the whole drug war in the first place was because that back in the 30s, the progressives, who were at the time, today's Democrats, the progressives were like, oh, well, there's more blacks and Hispanics who smoke marijuana, so if we make it against the law, we can keep a tighter grip on those sectors of the population.
Right.
And it's true. It's state-sponsored racism.
I think
Rand Paul said it. The drug war on drugs is racist.
You don't even want to hear about the fucking rug war, man.
Yeah,
That's
what won?
serious
You know who won that
Out of the
war?
way, Jews! I'm taking the rug.
Now, listen. I think that there's a good argument in a way for on a federal level for the U.S. to want to keep. Okay, the U.S. has reasons to want to keep. On a federal level, they want to keep a position that's against marijuana because it gives us as a overreaching military police force that fucks with other countries all the time. It gives us all kinds of reasons to fuck with other countries all the time and to deny things to certain countries and whatever. I mean, marijuana is not just a U.S. issue. It's definitely an issue that's it deals with. It comes into play with trade. You're not going to see major marijuana exporting countries being fucking backed by the fucking IMF.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
Case in point, back to the kratom thing.
It's part of the position.
The
we're
only
supposed
country
to
where
be.
kratom is banned is Thailand because it's cutting into their opium tax. There are too many people kicking the skag thanks to kratom. And
that is
it's
true
costing
as well.
them money.
Whatever happened to that Jankum? You guys remember that shit?
Oh, baby.
Steve knows all about that jankum.
Jankum.
Well, you bring up another key point. The entire opium epidemic that's going on in this country. If people can't get their pain pills, they go straight to heroin, and that's going on in the major cities as well. This is where the gangs and everything are amplifying because there's so much money coming in.
And 15 years later, we're still in Afghanistan.
Right, that's what I was going to say. The war on drugs, we know who won that.
15 fucking years.
Yeah,
Does that scare anyone else, man? Fuck.
No, that's pretty bad.
Our boys put the hero in heroin.
They call it Afghanistan the graveyard of empires for a reason.
And you'll notice after all that happened after 9/11 and all these things took place, you'll notice if you look at the stats, the influx of heroin that's being brought into the country, not just through raw heroin, but the opiates, the oxycodones, and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and
Whatever it is.
they're trying to do the same thing with kratom. They're like, oh, well, if the raw plant is available to the public at large, we can't make money off it. But if we ban it and then give the monopoly on it to the pharmaceutical industries and let them make a pill out of it, then that's all good.
Yeah, did you guys see that picture where the cops took a picture of that couple that overdosed?
Yeah, I saw that.
They were in the car.
Yeah,
And they had their kids in the back, and the cops snapped the picture of it.
That's the picture they want you to see. The picture they don't want you to see is pictures of U.S. soldiers guarding fields of dope.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I seen a picture that came through my feed that said pretty much the same exact thing.
Yep.
We're
And people just
all
think-
hooked into the information network, aren't we? Everyone's getting the right bits of information coming through. I'm just saying, it's interesting not being on Facebook to hear a lot of this stuff that's
Yeah.
everyone knows about certain things and certain happenings, and they're
Well, they knew
in
about the
this
quarterback
loop, and I just
situation.
hear about things it's weird.
Facebook is a hell of a drug.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I rebel sometimes, For me, friends and followers, when we're doing radio shows, that's one aspect of it. But to be honest, if you don't know, I always say this, and I don't know where it came from, but in the information age, ignorance is a choice. You're choosing to be ignorant. because obviously all the information is right in your hand. It's in your pocket, like I said earlier. So I don't understand, man.
That's true. Yep.
Hey, man, why don't you tell us a little bit about your radio station?
Man,
what you got going on over
got
there?
Some kind of technical issue. I don't think you can hear Don at all, can you?
No, I can't. He's really low.
I wonder what's up with that.
Try that.
Anyway, tell him to tell us about his radio
Okay, so yeah,
station.
can you tell us a little bit about your radio station? Go ahead and give us your plug, man. Give us your site.
Oh, absolutely. It's NWO Truth Radio. You can find us again on Facebook. We're actually on Blog Talk right now, but kind of working on things to expand. We just relaunched the network a couple weeks ago, but that's one network. And then I work with another friend of mine named Lee Peer on the Last Voice for Liberty network, and that's on Speaker and some other places. But like I was telling Don earlier, I'm trying to move up to where I can actually get my own site or whatever. Not to compete with anybody else or Mr. Jones.
The
or
more the
anybody.
merrier, man. Because look, all these little tiny individual markets make up a big thing on the whole, man. And that's what the whole
we all
point
work together.
is.
I mean, we may not know each other.
Dude, we got the most important thing is to get people thinking critically and for themselves, so we can break away from the situation that we've been brought into as a society.
Right. Well, like I said earlier, how are you going to change the situations if you're not talking about them? And I'm not, a debate is one thing.
The first step to solving any problem is admitting that there is one.
And that's
right. If you're married and your wife is pissed, you might want to talk about that, because that might come back to bite you in the ass. You know what I'm saying? Shit could get worse if you don't address that. And I'm not a marriage counselor or nothing. I'm just telling people that's just one example of what I'm talking about. If you see, that whole saying, if you see something, say something. I see a lot of shit, and I'm saying a lot of shit.
I know exactly what you're saying. I've come to kind of form a notion of that in my own head over the last few years. I feel like I've grown up to an extent, and I can see other people just ignoring the most obvious issues. It's like they're standing on train tracks, and just a mile down the train tracks, there's this very fucking obviously approaching train.
Right in your face.
They're just like, nah, I'm gonna keep smoking. No, I don't know. I'll quit. I'll put those patches on any day. No big deal. That for an example. To you smokers sitting right in front of me.
I mean, it's got to be something else. There's got to be something else.
Denial is a powerful thing.
Everyone's like, go Trump or go Hillary, and here I am just buying more ammo.
I think an important point.
Hey, we got a call coming in, guys.
Shoot, Dan.
We got a call.
Ooh, let's talk about guns.
Let's talk about calls.
Let's talk about guns, baby.
Hey, you're on the air.
Turn your radio down.
Turn your radio down and the YouTube off.
Hello.
Go ahead, caller.
Turn the radio down, please.
Hey, how's it going, Dan?
Hey, how's it going, caller?
Hey, it's Drew. I'm calling to. You were talking about the opiate. Yeah. I'm from Hampton. I'm friends with Dan, and I know this guy here, crazy one over here with the big eyes, staring at the camera. But I wanted to talk about the opiate situation you were talking about earlier, where like the war on drugs. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead, loud and clear.
Okay. In most places, like a lot of places like France, I think Portugal has done it, where they have legalized the opiates, such as heroin and things like that, where they made it a medical issue rather than like a drug enforcement or a law issue. They made it a health problem, a public health problem, and they started treating addicts, and they started and they decriminalized it. Those places have almost wiped out their entire opiate addiction problems. It's gotten to the point where in Ireland, their opiate addiction problem has gotten so big, they're thinking right now, they're still in deliberations and stuff, on whether or not to legalize heroin in Ireland now, to start treating it as a medical problem rather than a law enforcement problem.
That's a great point, caller. Portugal decriminalized everything pretty much a few years back, possessions of small amounts, and nobody wants to go back.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point.
Like once you make it, instead of making people who have addiction is a medical issue. Addiction is a physical chemical imbalance. So
it's the only disease you can get in trouble for having.
Yeah. That's like telling somebody that they're a criminal for having cancer. Like,
well, you never know.
And once you do start treating people, and you actually start treating them and stop looking at them as some horrible criminal that is gonna, steal your lunch money and, buy crack with it. Once you start looking at that person as somebody that will, how do we help this person? How do we get them back on their feet? Then that's when you stop seeing the problems with crime and things like that for these things, because you're healing these people. You're not keeping them in a system in which they have to steal for it, in which they have to kill for it, in which they have to go to a sketchy ass drug dealer, and
or in Chicago, mind
and
you.
get shot.
Yeah,
in Chicago, like risk getting shot up. You actually have a facility you can go to and get the help that you need. You actually can go to a licensed dealer with uncut drugs that aren't cut with fucking rat poison or whatever the fuck they do in order to expand their profits.
Fluoride.
You can actually go to these places where they're actually going to treat you and then actually get you off. They're going to get you on, and then you can get on, eventually you can get on like methadone.
Well, as we all know, there's no money in curing problems, just treating them and treating them and treating them.
Exactly.
Hey, Drew,
exactly.
did you hear
and that's
about...
the thing. That's the problem is, like, especially like in places like here in America where it's like, how can we profit off of people's misery rather than treat them and make them healthy?
Drew.
Yeah, exactly.
And and like you said, it all deals with the pharmaceutical industry. It all deals with
it's all intertwined. It's like a spider web.
Use it for international politics in order to control the opiate cartels and the opiate.
Why do you think
dealings in the Middle East? Like,
why do you think our government took over the opium trade in Afghanistan? For the money, for the profits. The same reason they go in other countries for oil or whatever else.
All that money is means to an end. It's all about power and it's all about control.
Yeah,
and they tell us the opposite.
It's in order to control their ability to profit from the their own land. Like from
and create chaos. So it's a win-win for them. I mean, they can destroy people's lives and people die and they make money. That's perfect for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The longer they keep the Middle East destabilized, the more profit they're going to be able to pull out of the sand.
Mm-hmm. You got it. And that's what I'm saying. I think that's what's going on, at least in Chicago, is the influx of heroin hitting the streets, and there's so much money to be made that people are killing each other over that profit.
Well, the biggest place is like places like Ohio, like small, especially like the more rural areas. That's where they're having a lot of these overdoses. It's not really even.
That's why you see
cities.
doctors cracking down. That's why people who really have family members that have legitimate problems with pain have to resort to what's referred to as hillbilly heroin.
Yep.
Speaking of which, did you guys hear anything about that that heroin that was getting cut with that pharmaceutical that was killing people? Yeah. Did you hear about that?
Or as the cartels call it, El Diablito.
So they're cutting the heroin with this chemical, and the shit was super cheap.
A few micrograms of it.
But then everybody starts dying from it, and they got this antidote for it, right? So now the antidote is like ridiculous expensive, and all you give it to someone in a certain amount of time, and they can live through it. But if not, they're gonna die. So they're creating even more market here with this stuff. So they're giving away this one drug that kills the shit out of you for free to the doctors, and it's hitting the streets in bulk quantities, getting cut into the heroin.
It's not funny though.
Well, the cartels are cooking it up too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're cutting it with all kinds of shit, man.
It's crazy.
If you give a heroin addict.
I was just watching something the other day where they took a bunch of coke and cut it all kinds of hell with baby laxatives, and like somebody like dehydrated to death and died because of the dehydration from snorting coke that was cut with too much baby laxatives.
They almost have to cut it. The drug dealers almost have to cut it. When they first get into the city, there's a hierarchy again when it comes to the drug dealers. As it works its way down, they're going to cut it to maximize profit, but they almost have to cut it because you can't give heroin addicts pure heroin because they're going to die. They're going to kill themselves.
And when it boils down to it, but even when you get to the point where you're starting to cut it and you're cutting it with other things, you're cutting it with
you can still kill
profit.
Right.
You don't have that if you have it in a registered if you were to go like say you go to to a weed shop in Colorado, and you're not going to be buying like disgusting skag weed that was grown in somebody's fucking closet.
Oh my gosh!
Like, you know what I mean? You're going to be. I mean, when it's
well, I've noticed over the last couple of years with legalization happening,
if they take the criminalization out of
quality
it,
on the streets, kind of, in my, not in my direct experience, of course, but
See, at least in a real free market, dope dealers would have to compete and sling better dope.
Anecdotally,
right.
There's been an improvement in
well, you guys have seen American Gangster, right? Like, in that movie, Denzel had the purest heroin, so he made the most money, right? And that's essentially what they're trying to do, but they're still cutting it to compete.
And I heard about this terrible story about this science teacher from New Mexico that got cancer. It was awful.
He really made it work out in his benefit.
But what it boils down to is
himself.
the more you give it, but if you keep treating it as a criminal problem, if you keep treating it as a war that we have to fight against, then all you're doing is you're creating more victims.
I know. When are we going to have a war on farmers markets or a war on book fairs?
You're not just creating more victims.
Because judging on how the war on terror and the war on drugs have gone,
Again, it's an industry. It's a profitable
Yeah, the war on drugs goes hand in hand with the prison-industrial complex.
War on...
How it works.
It's not just pure evil just to make people victims.
How about a war on beer and tits? Come on.
It's a machine. It's a very intentional thing.
It is. It's planned.
And it is. It's I mean, also like you said, it's keeping these things in a market where where you're having people running around like cutting it with like nobody gives a shit. Like if you're being, and that's another thing, if you're treated like a criminal when you're doing these things, you're going to act more like a criminal because you're going to have to hide it. You're going to have to do things that are sketchy. You're going to have to, and then also like, because it's underground, trying to find an open market for it where you can sell your goods on, and,
Oh, there's always demand for that.
In order to make profit. So at that point, in order to make profit, you have to cut it because you have to make the most profit out of the small amount of quantity that you have.
Well,
right? Because you don't know if you're going to keep that. You don't know if you're going to keep that customer base. So you have to make that money now. Well, and that's the problem that they start having is people start cutting it with all kinds of shit. And that's why these
unfortunately,
people
speaking of cutting things, we're coming up on the hour, caller. We're going to have to cut this short. We appreciate the call.
Thanks for calling in.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you.
Talk to you next week. Thanks.
No, he's right.
Nice little
segue
right on
the
there,
line.
Dan. That was very professional.
Hey, Dennis, can you hear me a little better now?
Yeah, I got you.
Man, I had to send to the computer turn all the way down. Like, it was going out on the air, but it wasn't hitting you.
I got you now. So yeah, before I get out of here, again, I want to thank you, Don, and everybody involved with the show for having me on. If you guys are interested, I'll actually be in communication with Don. Maybe we can set up something. Don, if you want to come on my show or anything, or in the future.
Sounds like a blast.
I'll definitely come back if you guys want me to come back. I'll definitely will,
man. Like I said, we'll do a little behind the scenes and get you in touch with the guys over here.
Yeah, definitely. And I didn't even really scratch the surface when it comes to Chicago. There's plenty more to go over and discuss.
There's tons of
an hour doesn't do it justice. So
no, it doesn't.
Well, it seems like cataloging the abuses of the ever-growing police state is a never-ending source of work for people such as you and I.
Exactly. You nailed it. Again, that's why I have a lot of respect, and I'm glad I found Don, and I'm glad you guys are doing what you're doing because, there's not too many people out here that actually put their neck on the line like we do, and I have a lot of respect for that. I'm glad you guys made the decision to actually stand up and use your voices like we all should be doing. So, if anything, thank you for that.
You're here.
And,
absolutely, man.
Again, thanks for having me on. Like I said, anybody can check me out on Facebook. Just type in Dennis Ford. I'm on there. And NWO Truth Radio, just check us out there. And like I said, I'll be in touch.
Hey Jackass?
And you got the, Friday?
HeyJackass.com.
And
HeyJackass.com.
You got the Friday night super show coming up, right?
Yeah, that's true. This Friday, like I said, I work with Leap here on the Last Voice for Liberty on his network, and we do the Friday night super show. And, we do that every Friday at 9 p.m.
Cool. What's the site for Last Voice of Liberty?
Last Voice for Liberty, and you can find that on Speaker.com.
Speaker.com?
Yeah, I'll send you a link. I'll send you anything you need.
Sounds great. We'll share it.
Cool, man.
All right.
Thanks, man.
And same with you guys. I'll share your whatever you got. Just send it to me or let me know. Tag me in it if you want, whatever.
All right, buddy. Thank you, man.
Awesome.
Yep.
Man.
Thank you guys. You guys have a good night.
Have a safe week and Godspeed.
Take care.